This is the tier list ranking every single player that will play for Manchester United or that is in the first team for Manchester United heading into the 2024-2025 season. Now, of course, some of these players might end up leaving. Some of these players, I don't know, might go on loan. You might agree with some of these players. Some players might even come in the time of this recording. But one thing I need to say, disclaimer, I'm not making this tier list to make Man United fans happy. I'm not making this tier list to speak highly about your favorite player just for the sake of speaking highly about him. These are my opinions, solely and purely my opinions on how I believe the squad should be kind of looking, kind of long-term, but also at this season that we're going to be kind of heading into. I'm going to be brutally honest, right? I kind of had this tweet the other day that a lot of people were retweeting. Some people were disagreeing. Some people were agreeing. But I basically said this, right? I feel like Man United fans are all in agreement, right? That the team needs a massive rebuild. And especially people who were like Ten Hag supporters last year. The big thing that they kind of wanted to say was that, look, we've seen player power eliminate so many different managers. And I want to see Ten Hag given the chance to rebuild the squad in his own image before deciding whether he's the right guy or not. And if you believe that, absolutely fair enough. A lot of people had that view. And clearly, Ineos have agreed with that. But here's the biggest problem, and I wouldn't even say it's just with Man United fans, but football fans in general. They all agree that they need a rebuild. They all agree that we need to tear up the squad and rebuild the squad in a new image with new players. Get rid of the deadwood. But the issue is, a lot of Man United fans are way too, emotionally attached to 95% of the squad. And here's the issue, right? I'm not trying to tell people how to support a club. I'm not here to tell you guys this is how you should support Man United. This makes you a good fan. This makes you a bad fan. I hate that rhetoric in general, to be honest with you. There's nothing that makes somebody a good Man United fan. If you support the team, you support the team. But the big thing is you support the team. You support the club. You're not a Wan-Bissaka fan or a Bruno fan or a Rashford fan. None of these players are bigger than the club. The club's success comes above any one individual's success in terms of priority. But I feel like a lot of people or a lot of the newer age fans, especially that exist on social media, really fail to grasp that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the biggest kind of talking point that I'm going to kind of say before we get into this tier list. This is a team and a group of players that as recently as 3 months ago, just finished 8th place in the Premier League, finished 4th in their Champions League group, in a group that consisted of Bayern, Galatasaray, and Copenhagen. And yes, they won the FA Cup, but for the most part, they all came together and they all hold varying degrees of responsibility for what is, in my eyes, the worst season I have ever personally watched Man United play. So forgive me if you think I'm harsh on any of your favorite players that may come into disrepute in this list. But at the end of the day, we're talking about elite level sport where it's purely business. And for a team that just finished 8th place, I'm sorry, a lot of guys are going to go into categories that you might not want to see them play. But that's the honest reality when it comes to Man United. A massive rebuild is needed for this squad. Like it or not, bro. And I'm sorry if your favorite player falls into a category you don't like, but this is my list. Feel free to make yours as well, too. Before we get started, actually, let me say this, right? We obviously have 5 different categories. The highest category is crucial. What does crucial mean if you don't understand what the word crucial means? Man United need this guy. First of all, he's in the starting 11. That, in my eyes, that's not even a negotiable. Like, he will be starting for Man United if you're in crucial. And the responsibility and the role that you play in this team is crucial towards Man United's success. Man United cannot have a successful season without a player in this category being absolutely at the top of his game. He's crucial. Second place, fighting for the 11. Now, this is a guy that will be in and out of the starting 11. You'll see him start some games you won't. He's not a guaranteed starter. He's not a crucial... Everybody's important in the team, right? You can't win a league or you can't have a good season with only 11 players. And this player is important to the team, but he's not as crucial as the guys above him. He's in and around the starting 11. We need him to have a good season, but there's no guarantee that he starts. Third tier, squad player. You're going to be in Man United's squad heading into the season. You're going to start a few games. You're going to be coming off the bench a lot of games. You might not see the pitch a few times, but you're in the squad. We need you, but we don't need you. You get what I'm saying? You're important, but you're not that important. Fourth, on the edge. What does on the edge mean? You're on the edge of staying or leaving. Forget about starting. That's a whole nother stratosphere that you need to look towards. At this current moment, the question marks around you are, should Man United be looking to sell you or maybe keep you around for a year or two? But that's kind of where you sit on the edge of being sold, or okay, you can stay another year. And then finally, get rid. AMP. Any means possible. Get this brother out of here. Get rid. You have no future at Man United. Thank you for your service, if a player in this case has any service, but at the current moment, you are surplus to requirements, and Man United getting rid of you would actually benefit the club in either the short term, the long term, or both. So those are the 5 categories. First player up, Andre Onana. Now let's talk a little bit about Onana. First of all, he's going into critical. Last season was like a tale of two halves for Andre Onana, right? The first half of the season was absolutely diabolical. Honestly, like for a guy that had so much expectation coming in, he was coming off a man of the match performance basically in a Champions League final. He was part of that great defense that saw Inter have such a successful season. And he was seen as like the antithesis to what David De Gea was for Man United. Okay, David De Gea in the past had proven to be a really good shot stopper, very good reflexes, old school goalkeeper. But with the ball at his feet, in terms of coming off his line, in terms of dominating the 6-yard box off set pieces, he was massively lacking. And in came Andre Onana, who was supposed to basically rectify all of those errors that De Gea had made. But the first half of the season was horrible from Onana. And I see a lot of people these days almost try and like rewrite history in terms of like, oh, he wasn't that bad. Guys, the first half of the season last year, Onana was horrible. In my opinion, he is the biggest factor for why Man United finished 4th in their Champions League group. Some of the goals that we conceded were directly because of his errors. In the Premier League as well too. In my opinion, had a horrible start to life. Nearly conceded a penalty in the first game. In my opinion, that kind of set the pace for the next 6 or so months. But to give him credit, I think the second half of the season, it was a lot better. There are still question marks around Onana's shot stopping in particular. I think that's the biggest question mark for him in total. Like, is he actually even a great shot stopper? Like, he can save shots. I think, in fact, Onana had the most saves in the league last year, in part due to how many shots United conceded. But there are, in my opinion, valid question marks about how elite a shot stopper he actually is. Because some of the goals that he concedes are almost like comical in terms of like how he tries to save them. Like there's instances where Onana is jumping over the ball in an attempt to save a shot. There's a shot going past him and he's diving like 3 seconds after the shot already goes past him. Getting beat at his near post in some instances that just kind of make you laugh if you're not a Man United fan. If you are a Man United fan, they can make you cry. But here's the thing of Onana. In an ideal world, in a good structured Man United team where the defensive is solid, they're not conceding 100 shots a game, they're able to play a higher line, they're keeping possession for most of the game, Onana's flaws should be massively minimized because you're conceding less shots, hence making sure that he doesn't have to like face as many shots as he normally does, which is an issue for me. But also you probably get to see the best out of him as well too. And the best, in my opinion, of Onana comes in his ball playing and his distribution. That's something that I think we've seen flashes in, but in other senses, United as a team, last year in particular, were not kind of like ready in terms of like the window, in terms of the development of the squad, to have a keeper like Andre Onana. They weren't able to play out of the back, even with a guy as gifted as he was. And you saw him go long so many times, which for me is a massive waste of his talents. But this year, with Lisandro back healthy, we hope for most of the season. With a guy like Leny Yoro next to him, we hope for most of the season. With a more stable midfield, with guys healthy, with guys in form, United will not be as kamikaze as they were last year, and it should hopefully allow us to see the best of Onana. And if Onana is at his best, Man United can have a very successful season. That's how critical he is to their team being good. And for me, there is no question that he is the starter for Man United. No disrespect to Bayender, no disrespect to Tom Heaton, but Onana is the guy that will probably be playing 38 games a season next year. Simple as that. Second on this list, Amad Diallo. Now, I'm going to start Diallo at fighting for the 11 because realistically, that is what he's doing. Amad Diallo is fighting to start for Man United this year. And he has a massive opportunity, in my opinion, with preseason, with Antony's woes, with Sancho's inconsistencies, with the fact that Garnacho is coming in late from Copa America. Amad Diallo has a real chance to kind of impress and take preseason by storm and make his claim, stake his claim as Man United's number 1 first choice right winger. He will probably start the first game against Fulham at right wing, barring a complete disaster. And from there, it's up to Amad Diallo to perform and to impress and keep that position long term, which is why I start him at fighting for the XI, fighting for the 11, because that's what he's doing at the moment. He's fighting with a few guys for that position. But it's a weak position, and it's definitely there for him to claim. Now, if he actually stamps and stakes his claim for that position and is the right winger for most of the Man United season, he will go up to crucial. Because I actually think, and maybe Antony falls into this category as well too, because he's a left-footed right winger who holds the width and wants to cross and wants to play the way Ten Hag wants to play, but just ultimately isn't good enough. So he falls in this category too. But in Amad, you actually have a natural right-sided player. With a guy like Garnacho, he did a job last year at times, but he's not a right-sided player. You know what he wants to be on the left, he wants to be cutting in, he wants to be going at goal, he can do a job on the right, and he actually impressed me a decent amount on the right, but he's not a natural right winger. Jadon Sancho, God knows what his best position is. Only Jadon Sancho and God himself know what his best position is. So that's another subject altogether. But Amad actually is a right-sided player. And the creativity that he possesses, the inventiveness, the skill, the trickery, the passing, the ability to cut in and shoot with his left. I really think if Ahmad continues the form that we saw towards the tail end of last season, and we've seen glimpses of in preseason, into the start of this Premier League season, we have a real opportunity to see Ahmad, for the first time in his Man United career, really stake a claim to be one of their most important players. So I'm going to start him at fighting for the 11, because I think at this current moment, that's where his role is. But it wouldn't surprise me if all things go well, if we are seeing Ahmad, and like we see this list in 6 months and we decide to redo it, he could potentially be at crucial. He could potentially also be in squad player if he doesn't take his chance. But he's kind of in that interesting position now where the competition for that place isn't that fierce. You've already impressed a bit. There's a large clamor from the fan base. We all want to see you succeed. It's now up to Ahmad. For me, there's nothing stopping Ahmad anymore from taking his opportunity. Before, there were roadblocks. He didn't have the faith of the manager. He was maybe deemed too small. He had to go out on loan. There was favoritism. I think the favoritism aspect of Antony has completely exited Ten Hag's mind. I don't think he looks at Antony anymore as a guy that he has to play no matter what to prove a point. Sancho, we know that situation as well. And Garnacho, although I think he likes him, like I said, he's going to be away for a few weeks. Stake your claim. Make this position your own. And let's see the player that we all know you can be, Ahmad. Like the talent that you have. Very few players in this team, in my opinion, possess the raw natural ability that Amad Diallo possesses. So for me, I'm putting him at fighting for the 11 right now. Next up, Hannibal Mejbri. Chat, I'm going to be real. I got Hannibal at get rid. I think it's time for Hannibal to leave. Look, I think we all wanted to see him given a chance. I think we all want this idea that Hannibal could be a real first-team player for Man United. And this isn't to say Hannibal is a bad player or that Hannibal cannot succeed at a different Premier League club. You look at a guy like Andreas Pereira, right? He probably had a bit more chance than Hannibal in terms of like first-team opportunity. But ultimately, Andreas Pereira was a player that wasn't good enough for Man United. But even upon leaving Man United, still managed to stake a very, very good Premier League career for Fulham. And even got himself into the Brazilian national team. Now, what does that tell you about the Brazilian national team? The less said, the better. But you can be good enough to be a professional Premier League player and an international player and still not be good enough for Man United. And I'm not saying that Hannibal is Andreas Pereira level or that he'll go on to do what Andreas Pereira did, but very clearly, in my opinion, Hannibal is not up to the standard of this current Man United team, nor where Man United kind of want to be in the next few seasons. The last few loan moves haven't really worked out. I think he went to Sevilla just this past season, and there were even question marks about his discipline and about his attitude. But I just think as a footballer in total, a lot of the time, the things that we end up saying about Hannibal are, oh, he works hard, and he's tenacious, and he loves to get stuck in, and he understands what it means to wear the Man United badge. Well, let's be real, guys. Every single person that claims to be a Man United fan would also be tenacious and would also leave everything on the line and would also get stuck in and also understand what it means to wear the United badge. But that doesn't mean you're good enough for Man United. And obviously, that's an extreme example. I'm not saying Hannibal is as bad as your regular fan, but he's not good enough for Manchester United, in my opinion. And I think it is time to kind of part ways. See if he can get a chance at a different club and kind of reignite his career. There's no shame in not being good enough for Man United, bro. You can stake up and create for yourself a perfectly good professional career and a top 5 league without being good enough for Man United. And I think, in my opinion, that's kind of the future that lies for Hannibal Mejbri. Next up is Jonny Evans. First of all, my brother, salute. Because the season you had last year where you probably came in expecting you were going to just like be in and around the team, maybe play some games for the youth team, get your coaching badges, just be back at the club. Your last year, you ended up playing way more than you probably expected and way more than you should have. So again, salute, because you actually looked pretty decent at times when you played last year. And obviously, he's extended for another year, and he's probably going to hope that he doesn't have to like be relied on as much as he did last year. But realistically, I'm going to put Jonny Evans at squad player because he's not going to leave. We just gave him a new contract. It's not essential that we release him. It's not essential that we sell him. He's just a good guy to have around the squad. He's experienced. He's been at the club since he was a kid. He's a winner. He's a good mentor for younger center backs, which United have a few of them. So I have no issue keeping Jonny Evans. And I say no issue, right? It's Jonny Evans. He's at the club, like it or not. But let me make this very clear. If Jonny Evans starts a single game for Man United this season, it's an absolute disgrace from the club. And it's an absolute disgrace from the medical team. And it's an absolute disgrace from the scouting and recruitment team as well, too. Jonny Evans should be Man United's 5th choice center back. And he probably was last year as well, too. But the fact that as many players got injured or became unavailable as they did, requiring Jonny Evans to play as many games as he did at his age was a disgrace from everybody not named Jonny Evans. And like I said, salute to him for coming in and doing a job. But we shouldn't be expecting and relying on Jonny Evans anymore. And if he has another season like he did last year, major question marks need to be looked at the manager who's balancing the squad and who's overseeing training and like managing minutes. Major question marks have to be looked at the medical team And major question marks also have to be looked at the recruitment team as well too, because why did you not do enough business that we have enough depth at that position so we don't need to rely on a Johnny Evans who's on his last legs? That's all I'll say. So Johnny Evans, again, I have no issue with him being in the squad. I'm put him here because I think anything below that is A, unrealistic, and B, disrespectful. But please, Man United, do not make the same mistakes that you did last year. Next up is Kobbie Mainoo. Kobbie Mainoo, for me, crucial. And it's crazy that we're saying this about what, an 18-year-old? I think he's 18 still, right? Or did he turn 19 yet? Kobbie's 19, excuse me. Just turned 19 recently. It's crazy that we're saying that about a 19-year-old, but when you're as good as Kobbie Mainoo is, age goes out the window when it comes to a footballer like this. He is crucial for Man United. The technical security, the confidence on the ball, the swagger, the maturity in which he kind of possesses and weighs on his shoulder, the poise that he has on the ball, the fearlessness to drop deep and receive the ball in uncomfortable situations, the ability to carry the ball forward, the ability to link up. Kobbie Mainoo is crucial for what Man United do next season. Crucial. And when Man United are looking for a center midfielder or a defensive midfielder, which they currently are in this market, and we're going to talk about midfielders, because I'm a firm believer that as much as we're looking at center backs and we've looked at a striker and I'm sure they want another winger, Man United need to reinforce that midfield, in my opinion, more so than any other position. I wouldn't even just bring one. I'd be looking at two. God damn it, I'd almost be looking at three. I think it's that vital that Man United reconstructs and adds depth to that position. But any player that they get, like it or not, they need to analyze and they need to recruit with one eye and with half a mind on how that player meshes with Kobbie Mainoo. Because in Kobbie Mainoo, you have what I call a club cornerstone. That is a player that for the next 10, 15 years, as long as he's fit and God forbid injuries or any outside influences disrupt his career, as long as he stays fit, healthy, and on the correct path of development that we all expect him to be, he is in Man United's plans and every manager that Man United hire for the foreseeable future. And with that being said, every midfielder that they sign has to mesh well with him. He's crucial, man. He's absolutely crucial for Man United's short-term future and for their long-term future. I can't speak highly enough about Kobbie Mainoo. Next up is Mason Mount. Now, Mason Mount for me, fighting for the 11. And I feel like Mason Mount is one of those players now, right, where I feel people have just kind of made up their opinion on him. And it's very hard for most football fans, once they have a firm opinion of a player, for them to change their mind. And I feel like Mason Mount has now kind of like found himself in a situation, especially with United fans who maybe already weren't a fan of the deal to begin with, and then even less so when he was given the number 7, and then even less so when his injuries kind of mounted up, no pun intended, and barely featured last season. I feel like a lot of Man United fans have kind of made their mind up about Mason Mount. But let's be real, chat, right? Mason Mount is not a bad player. And I feel like that's kind of become the consensus opinion on him. Like, he's a meme, he's average, he's a workhorse. Chelsea offloaded him for a reason. Mason Mount's not a bad player. Mason Mount is a Champions League winner, and he was an important player to a Champions League winning squad. Mason Mount is a fully fledged international for his country. Mason Mount is a player that has played and delivered at almost every stage when it comes to club and international football. Why are we pretending now that Mason Mount is a scrub? The other day I was on James Alcott's YouTube channel, right? And we were talking about Xavi Simons. And I was like, I don't really see how Xavi Simons fits into the United squad because we already have two players in those attacking midfield positions in Bruno and Mason Mount that I almost feel both of them do a little bit of what Xavi Simons would offer. And I almost feel like it would just kind of be like overload. Like, you're just adding another player where you already have a lot of depth in that position. Like, attacking midfield for me is not an area of the pitch that United need to target this summer in particular. And I had people basically talking to me about, how can you compare Mason Mount to Xavi Simons? How dare you compare Mason Mount to Xavi Simons? Is this guy okay comparing Mount to Xavi Simons? First of all, why are we acting like Xavi Simons is now all of a sudden like the reincarnation of Ronaldinho? Second of all, what has Xavi Simons ever accomplished that is on par or greater than what Mason Mount has accomplished in his career? And third of all, what attributes does Xavi Simons possess that makes him suddenly this clear of Mason Mount? I'm sorry, Mason Mount now is a victim of the fact that he spent his last season at Chelsea injured and in and out of the team, and then injured and in and out of the team at Man United as well too. And the reality is, sports fans, not even just football fans, but sports fans are prisoners of the moment. It's all about, what have you done for me recently? And fair enough, I can't knock that mentality. But Mason Mount didn't just forget how to play football. Mason Mount didn't all of a sudden just become a bad player. He's still, for the most part, the same player that was one of the key guys for a Chelsea team that went all the way and won the Champions League. He's still a guy that was, again, one of the main guys for a Chelsea team that were consistently making the top 4 and going far into cup competitions, in and around the England teams that were going deep into tournaments. Why are we acting now like all of a sudden United have a scrub on their hands? And I'm sorry, this is a guy that's fighting for the 11, bro. I understand Kobbie, like I said, is crucial for me. Bruno is crucial. But Mason Mount will push both of them very, very far. And another thing with Mason Mount that I think people are, you know what? We still have to see it. I can't say it's definitely going to happen. But Mason Mount for me is an option on the right for Man United. On the right, Mason Mount is an option in some circumstances for Man United. I'm not saying he's going to be Man United's first choice right winger for the remainder of the season, but Mason Mount is an option for Man United on the right. So here's a few things that for me make Mason Mount a very good option for Man United this season. His versatility, first and foremost. His pressing off the ball. I think he offers that to a level that very few players in this entire United team as a whole can even compare. His off-the-ball work rate, his intensity. That's all stuff off the ball. His technical security is actually quite underrated. And Man United, to be fair, since Kobe, we don't really have that issue as much. But you look at a lot of the rest of the team, they're not really the tightest with their close control. They are sloppy. They like to kind of release the ball first time. They do lose the ball. There isn't a great deal of ball retention. In Mason Mount, you have a guy that has very tidy feet, that is good in close control situations, that does take care of the ball, that will complete the short 5-yard passes. Every team needs profiles like that. So this isn't me saying Mason Mount now is going to completely transform Man United's team and he's going to take Bruno out of the 11. I'm under no impression that, for me, if Bruno is at his best or Mason Mount's at his best, Bruno is the guy for Man United. I completely understand that. But you need a full squad. And I think Mason Mount will push players in every single position this year. He will get a lot of minutes. He will start a lot of games. And at the end of the day, Man United's success will rely on, as well too, on how fit Mason Mount can be and how good Mason Mount can be. In my opinion, he's as good as a new signing this year. And I expect big things from Mason Mount this year. The issue is, how does that midfield three work? For me, Mason Mount cannot coexist with Bruno Fernandes. I don't want to hear it. For me, there's not a single defensive midfielder that makes those two work. But we always complain about how many minutes Bruno plays. And wow, how does his body never break down? And oh, Bruno, you can clearly tell he's gassed at this moment. So why wouldn't we want to have a guy like Mason Mount that we can bring into certain circumstances? Oh, we're playing a game where we're going to have less of the ball and we want more like legs in midfield. You bring on a Mason Mount. Why not? We're going to be playing in 4 different competitions in the Europa League, which has God knows how many rounds. And you're telling me Bruno is going to play in every single one of those as he enters his 30th year on this planet. I'm very happy to have Mason Mount on this team. Very, very happy. Tyrell Malacia. Tyrell Malacia is on the edge, bro. What the hell has happened to this guy? Has anybody seen Tyrell Malacia? Someone put an APB out for Tyrell Malacia because I don't know where the hell he is. I saw him basically at the FA Cup celebration, I think last year, rocking a full-on afro. And I think it was his first public appearance in over 365 days. Quite frankly, I actually think it's a bit disgraceful that Man United have not given us any single bit of news or update on what Tyrell Malacia's situation is. Does anybody even know what his injury was last year? That's not to blame Tyrell Malacia, by the way. Whatever the brother is dealing with in real life, I wish him all the best. Full recovery. I hope it's nothing personal. I hope you weren't ill. I hope a loved one is okay. But damn, is it too much to ask for a fan to kind of have an update on players on his team? We've been completely left in the dark as a fan base. No one knows where this brother is. Has anybody seen Tyrell Malacia? And furthermore, is he going to be fit this season? Because if not, ladies and gentlemen, we have an issue. We have an issue. Left back was probably the biggest issue for Man United from start to finish of last season that we had. 6 players made appearances at left back for Man United. And guess what? Tyrell Malacia was not one of those 6 players. 6 players made appearances at left back. Tyrell Malacia was not one of those players. We saw Luke Shaw play there. We saw Amrabat play there. We saw Victor Lindelof play there. We brought Sergio Reguilon to play there. Anthony played there. I mean, what's going on, chat? Dalot played there. Wan-Bissaka played there. If you didn't play left back at Man United last season, I don't even know where you were. Everybody got a turn at left back, except for Tyrell Malacia, who actually plays the damn position. So does somebody want to tell me where Tyrell Malacia is? I'd love to know. Won't be back until December. What the hell is going on? When he's fit, is he good? I'd argue not. I think he was decent in his first season, Raf. And this is why, for me, I'm putting him on the edge. Because I actually think in Malacia, from what we saw, he was solid. He was a good deputy to Luke Shaw. And at times, I think he actually gave Luke Shaw a real push, especially in those early weeks. Let's not forget the first season, right? Luke Shaw played the first 2 games. And then the game against Liverpool, Malacia came in. And Malacia is not as technical a footballer as Luke Shaw. Don't get it twisted. We're a better team with Luke Shaw. But let's be real. Malacia probably gave a bit more intensity and aggression and bite as a left back than Luke Shaw did. And that's not to say he's better than Luke Shaw, but he gave us a different edge. I didn't mind Tyrell Malacia, to be honest with you. Was he the finished article? Absolutely not. But he's still a young man. There's still room to improve. And that's why, for me, I'm not going to put him at get rid yet. Because if he plays, I think there's something to work with there. I think it's a decent player. But damn, bro. Are you going to play anytime soon? So for me, this is his last chance. I'll give him this year. And another thing too, right? And we'll speak about him later, but it appears like competition is on the horizon for that position and on the other side as well too. So for Malacia's sake, Get healthy soon, brother. Tom Heaton is a squad player. He's very happy to be Man United's third choice keeper. He doesn't kick up a strut. I'm sure he's very good for the dressing room as well too. Basically everything I said for Johnny Evans, just copy and paste that for Tom Heaton. Good dude. Maybe Johnny Evans and Tom Heaton should have their own category for good dude. Next up, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Now this is one of those ones, chat, that this is like a big talking point at the moment because it does appear like Aaron Wan-Bissaka's immediate future lies away from Old Trafford. It appears like West Ham are days away from signing him, completing a fee of just below £20 million. And it looks like Man United is looking to replace him instantly as well too with Mazraoui from Bayern Munich. Now we'll talk about Mazraoui a little down the line, right? But Wan-Bissaka, I feel like this guy has completely split the fan base these last few days. And all of a sudden, the way I'm hearing people talk about Aaron Wan-Bissaka is as if we have like this like ultimate jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife right back that anytime we need him, he does a job. Let me be very honest with you, chat. And this is again why I started with a disclaimer, right? You might be upset if you're a Wan-Bissaka fan, but I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care. Wan-Bissaka is a nice player. Even nice. He's a solid player. He's a solid right back who has an exceptional knack for defending in 1v1 situations. But outside of that, the cons severely outweigh the pros. Let's speak about a few of them. We're going to talk about even on the ball, first of all. We know his issues, right? And people will say, oh, you got aesthetic bias. Excuse me. Please, don't disrespect my eyes, the audience's eyes, and your own eyes as well, too. This guy on the ball is not up to standard for an elite level team. And I know Man United is not an elite level team yet, but that's where they're trying to get to. They're trying to be a team that controls games and they're the protagonist of games and they want to build out from the back and they want to dictate how the other team plays. Wan-Bissaka is like the ultimate reactive footballer. Even the way he defends is reactionary. He never steps forward out of a forward, if you notice, to win the ball off them. He backs up, squares them up, and then he'll almost let them get across and then he'll put a foot in to stop it. Or he'll let them get in a dangerous position and then he'll put in a foot to stop it. I call it almost like arrogant defending. It's like he's like a highlight defender, but he's a reactive player. You want proactive footballers at your team, not reactive footballers. And Wan-Bissaka for me is a reactive footballer. On the ball, I'm sorry, bro. I know you could say like, oh, he's hurt by how he looks when he plays, but let's be real. Even if you take the aesthetic element out of it, bro, he's average on the ball. He's average on the ball. He would not start for the likes of Arsenal, for the likes of Liverpool, for the likes of Manchester City, for the likes of Chelsea. For most elite teams in world football, even good teams in world football, Wan-Bissaka is not their immediate starter. Any team in world football that seriously wants to stake a claim to being a team that controls games and they're the protagonist in football matches, and they build out from the back, and they hit you with relentless attacks from out wide. They're not starting Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Aaron Wan-Bissaka is the perfect like insurance policy where you have a certain matchup against a really tough winger, and you kind of want to slow him down. You bring on Wan-Bissaka. But chat, how many times, especially in modern football, are you up against a winger like that? Like, yeah, when you're playing Jeremy Doku, it's great to have a Wan-Bissaka for those situations. If you're playing, I don't know, think of like a winger like that, like an elite level winger. And there's not that many great 1v1 wingers anymore, chat. That's another thing, right? We'll see what the Savio kid kind of brings to the Premier League. You're not really facing those assignments anymore. You need to defend as a unit rather than as individuals. That's modern day defending. So for me, Wan-Bissaka defensively is overrated. As a 1v1 defender, he's brilliant. I can't take that away from him. But 1v1 defending is not the only aspect of defending. His awareness at the back post has always been poor. He loses concentration quite often, especially when balls are put into the box. For me, defending, he's not brilliant in the air. He loses his marker at times. I think sometimes he is drawn into the ball. And like I said, I find him sometimes to be a very arrogant 1v1 defender. To the point where like he would rather concede a corner kick because he allows a guy to come so close into our box or down the line and he'll concede a corner kick, but it'll look brilliant. But the danger is not gone. They still have a set piece where you could have just gone closer to him, higher up the pitch, won the ball back, and played from there. And like I said, that's without even getting to him on the ball. On the ball, he's not up to the level. I wouldn't normally mind if Wan-Bissaka keeping him, to be honest with you. Like as, again, on the edge, or maybe even as a squad player. But the fact is as well too, chat, and I think something that a lot of people are forgetting, Wan-Bissaka has 1 year left on his contract. So what's the point of even keeping him for a year? He has 1 year left on his contract. He's going for free next year anyways. Unless what, you want to give Wan-Bissaka another contract, and this is how you end up with players that you can never get rid of. I'd get rid of Wan-Bissaka this summer. I absolutely would. Next up, Harry Maguire. We got Harry Maguire and we got Victor Lindelof side by side. And I think that's absolutely brilliant because I think their futures are directly coinciding with the other. For me, one of them has to go. one of them has to stay to be our fourth choice center back, in my opinion. Because I believe Man United will probably sign another center back this year. Whether it's De Ligt, whether they magically bring up enough money for Brentwood, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think they're going to bring another one in. For me, one of these guys has to stay as a fourth choice center back, leaving Evans as the fifth. And the other one has to get the hell out of here. Now, if I had my preference, Lindelof would be the very first player I would get rid of. The very first player I would get rid of. Everything I talked about with Wan-Bissaka in terms of not being good enough, Lindelof for me is even worse. I think Lindelof is one of the poorest center halves. One of the poorest consistent starting center halves. Forget the Blacketts who were here a few games, the McNairs, they were here a few games. I'm talking like guys that have actually been first choice center backs for Man United throughout a whole season. For me, he's one of the poorest ones I have seen Man United actively employ. I think he has gained this reputation that is so undeserving because he often comes in when Varane is injured, or he often comes in when a Bailly was injured, or goes in with Lissandro, and like he doesn't make like loud mistakes like Harry Maguire. Maguire, when he makes a mistake, it's much more alarming and it's much more obvious than when Lindelof makes a mistake. But Lindelof, in my opinion, bar maybe one season he had when he was actually next to Maguire, and for me, Maguire was one of the better center backs in the league. Lindelof, in my opinion, has never been good enough for Man United. For me, he's an average center back. Honestly, Chad, he would be one of the first players I'd be getting rid of this summer. In fact, it's actually baffling to me how Lindelof is actually still at the club. And I think he's another one too. Correct me if I'm wrong, has 1 year left on his contract. And this might be a hot take, chat. I think Lindelof is worse than Maguire. I think he is. And you guys might say, oh, why is that a hot take? A year ago, I remember me and Cam went on the United View and said that same thing, and people killed us for it. But for me, Lindelof has never been better than Maguire, ever. And when the two of them were the center back partnership under Oli, I always felt it was Maguire holding Lindelof's hand and not the other way around. So for me, Lindelof, one of the first players I would get rid of. Now, Maguire, but here's the situation, right? Lindelof is worse than Maguire, but Maguire has probably a bigger market than Lindelof does. Like Maguire, you're probably more likely to get a decent fee than a Victor Lindelof. And that's when it comes down to like finances. How badly does United really need to accrue a fee for this? Is a fee for Maguire more important than just having him as a center back rather than Lindelof as your fourth choice center back? Me personally, because I'm not in charge of Man United's finances, I would have Maguire as a squad player and Lindelof in terms of get rid. But I could very easily see United deciding to sell Maguire, also because Maguire probably wants to get back into the England team. Gueye had a great tournament, and at this point, new manager coming in, is Maguire still deemed as untouchable like he was under Southgate? Perhaps not. Perhaps now playing time is massively important for him. And if that's the case, then Maguire has to be the one that kind of leaves instead of Lindelof. But again, this is purely coming from the way I envision United being their best this season. It involves Maguire as the fourth choice center back and Lindelof being sold. But like I said, just to clarify, I could completely see the roles being reversed here. But if I'm prioritizing quality, for me, Maguire has to be a squad player. Lindelof has to be get rid. Next up, McTominay. Oh, this is another one, chat. McTominay is interesting. I would get rid of him. And again, this is one of those ones I know United fans who are not familiar with my content, they're not familiar with me. They're going to look at me and say, what the hell are you talking about? You're casual. You don't know what you're talking about. Do you know how many points McTominay won us last year of his goals? How many times McTominay saved us? McTominay last season actually deserves a lot of credit for how many times he came in clutch for Man United. At times, damn it, he was more clinical than Højlund was. He was more reliable in front of goal than our 70 million pound striker. And for a player that for most of the summer everyone expected was going to be sold, for him to kind of get as many minutes as he did and retain his importance to the team last year as he did, I have to hold up my hands and say, A, I didn't expect it, and B, I commend it. But I'm sorry, chat, Scott McTominay is not good enough for Man United. It's the harsh but honest reality. McTominay is an honest, hardworking player that has his uses for a lot of teams. I have no doubt that McTominay, he's being linked to Fulham, he's being linked to West Ham. McTominay, I'm sure, could suit those teams in certain ways. He has an eye for a goal. He gets himself into good positions. Athletically, he's a big, strong, athletic guy. He's a decent Premier League midfielder, but he's not a Man United level midfielder. He never has been, and he never will be. And I don't care how many points he won Man United last year. Over the course of a season, McTominay might win you a game or win you a few points here or there with the goals that he picks up by drifting into the box, ghosting into the box, and kind of finishing late. But let me be very clear with what I'm about to say. Over a 38-game season, Scott McTominay is more of a net negative to your football team than he is a net positive. You're a worse team over 38 games if Scott McTominay is in your team than if he's not. And I don't care how many points here and there he'll win you. Over a 38-game season, he's losing you more points than he's winning. He's losing you more points than he's winning. And this is why I always say, chat, I'm very consistent with this. Goals and assists, they're important. But what's more important than scoring goals and having assists is winning football games. And there's different ways to win football games. How influential you are to your team winning games is more important than how many goals and assists you end up with at the end of the season. Because your value to winning is the most important thing in football. Any manager will tell you, any player will tell you at the elite level, your goal at the end of the day when you leave a football pitch is not to score a goal. It's to help your team win. And I'm sorry, Scott McTominay's value to Man United in terms of winning games is more of a negative than it is a positive. And for me, the fact that we can even accrue 30 to 40 million pounds is a bonus. He's one of the few players in this team that can actually command a healthy transfer fee that we can pocket and invest elsewhere. For me, this is a no-brainer. I would get rid. Next up is Diogo Dalot. Diogo Dalot is fighting for the 11. Diogo Dalot I could argue he was Man United's player of the season last year. I could very easily make that argument. He was without a doubt, he was the most consistent from match day 1 to match day 38. He was one of the few players that could actually exit last season with their head held high. Proud for the most part of how they performed. He maintained and respected the level of a Man United player. But let's be real, chat. If Wan-Bissaka has to leave, and if Mazraoui is to enter the fray, Dalot has real competition at that place. And I don't think Dalot is as untouchable a player and untouchable a talent that Mazraoui can't displace him in the team. That's just the way I look at it. I think Mazraoui could very easily displace Dalot in 11. That's not to say he will, and that's not to say I think he should. But the difference in quality between Dalot and Mazraoui is not so much that Dalot is going to play every single game. If Mazraoui comes in and impresses, he could very easily take Dalot's position. Now, it's not enough to say Dalot is never going to feature next year or that Dalot has no chance of starting. Dalot has a chance of starting, but I think he's fighting for the 11. I don't think he is a staple, a rubber stamp, a guarantee of starting. That's the way I see it. Next up is Luke Shaw. Now, this one, chat, is very, very difficult. Luke Shaw, for me, is the biggest conundrum in this entire team. Honestly, chat, he's the one that, for me, divides opinion, even in my own head, more than any other player. Because it's like, damn. Any other guy with his injury record, with his fitness record, with his shambolic availability over the last few seasons, damn it, since he's been at the club, they'd be gone. They would be gone. Luke Shaw is Man United's longest tenured player at the club. Currently, he's been at the club since 2014. This is his 10th season as a Man United player. He's available for a testimonial right now. And how many elite seasons has he had? I'm saying elite, like great seasons, like 2, 3. Most players with that injury record and that amount of inconsistency would have been ushered out the door a long time ago. But here's the frustrating bit with Luke Shaw. You can love him, you can hate him. I'm here to tell you right now, Luke Shaw's a damn good player. Luke Shaw's a damn good player. He's very, very talented. And when Luke Shaw is fit and firing, Man United are a better team when Luke Shaw is playing left back. That's not me here overrating Luke Shaw and saying he's the best left back in the world, because I know there are some United fans that tend to go down that direction. I'm not here to tell you Luke Shaw is the best left back in the world. I'm not saying there's no reality where United could find an upgrade on Luke Shaw. I'm sure they could look hard enough and find somebody that can offer you a consistency, a fitness, and also a good level of ability too. But for me, Man United are a better team when Luke Shaw plays. And I think with what they have available, even with Mazraoui coming, and I know Mazraoui can play on the left, if Luke Shaw is fit, Luke Shaw starts. He's massively important for their build-up. He's massively important in terms of providing actual width on that left-hand side, because every left winger we have wants to cut in. He's a good passer of the ball, fairly good crosser of the ball, drives the ball well. When he's focused defensively, can defend at a very high level. It's a real conundrum, chat, because honestly, there's a part of me that almost wouldn't blame Ineos for looking at Luke Shaw and saying, I think it's actually best for us to move on. We can't rely on you. You've been here a long time. You've been a very good servant to the club, but it's best for us to look in a different direction at a more reliable guy. I wouldn't blame them if they did that, chat, but Luke Shaw starts if he's fit, bro. And I don't know if there's anyone even fighting for his place in the 11. If Luke Shaw is fit, chat, again, take all your bias. Look at the squad we have. I'm not saying we have Teo Hernandez here. I'm not saying we have Alfonso. We have the squad we have. Is anybody getting Luke Shaw to the 11 if Luke Shaw is fit and firing? I don't know, chat. I'd put him on the edge. I don't even think that's the worst shout Ollie's wheel. I really don't think it is. But it's not an on the edge in terms of like, I mean, it is, but it's a different on the edge to Malacia, for example. It's very different. It's like United really needs to decide this summer. I even say this summer. It's probably a decision they're going to make next summer because there's too many priorities to look at Luke Shaw and say, we need to get rid of you this summer. But in the very near future, Man United are going to have to take a look at Luke Shaw and say, what direction are we trying to go towards with you? How old is the guy right now? Chat, Luke Shaw just turned 29. He's not even 30 yet. That's crazy. People forget that we signed this guy at 19 years old. For me, he's on the edge. I can't lie, chat. I think he's actually on the edge. And it's not because I don't think he's good enough for Man United. Let me make that very, very clear. before you guys all rush the comments on YouTube, this is not me saying Luke Shaw is not good enough to play for Man United. But we're getting to a point 10 years in where if Man United decided to move on from Luke Shaw as a football fan, as a Man United fan, I think you'd be very hard pressed to realistically be outraged. I think you would. Yeah, for me, it's crucial or on the edge. I'm going to put him on the edge. I think that's a decision that the club really needs to think hard about. Because, guys, you can't have a player that every single season, you don't know if he's going to play 10 games, 38 games, 50 games, or 0 games. You have no idea. You can't rely on the guy. Oh, man. It doesn't get any easier, right? Marcus Rashford. I think 3 months ago, this would have been a whole lot more difficult. 3 months ago, I think Marcus Rashford, I would have actually said, is probably heading towards an exit from Man United. Not only because, forget about what you think or what I think. I think the marriage was kind of coming to an end. But I think it's pretty clear that Marcus Rashford is staying at Man United, and he's staying at Man United for the long run. I don't think Rashford's going anywhere. Not only is he on a long-term contract, he's on a very expensive, high-wage contract, making it very difficult for suitors to pry him away from United and match those wages. What he represents to Man United as a local boy, a guy who's been here since the academy. Where's the number 10? Is one of the senior statesmen now of the club. For me, he is the face of Man United. It's very difficult to imagine Marcus Rashford leaving. And I don't see it happening the next few seasons. I think Rashford, love him or hate him, is here to stay. And I told you guys at the start, crucial is about how much importance you have to Man United's season being a success or not. And in my opinion, Man United's season being a success or being a failure rests almost entirely on what kind of production Marcus Rashford decides to give you this season. I'll go back to 2 seasons ago where Man United finished 3rd and won the Carabao Cup. Specifically, the second half of the season, Man United were winning games almost purely at times because Marcus Rashford decided to be he decided to be the difference maker. And that's what you're getting with Rashford when he's at his best. You're getting one of the biggest difference makers in the Premier League. When he's at his best, Rashford can win you games almost single-handedly. We were seeing a player that was performing like one of the best players in the world. And I think that's the frustrating bit with Rashford, right? It's a bit similar to Luke Shaw, but different in terms of why they're inconsistent. Luke Shaw, for me, it's down to injuries. Rashford, it's almost down to to be fair, I'm not too sure what it is with Rashford. It almost seems like his performances depend on his mood at times. And I'm not trying to call him a moody player, but he kind of is. You see when it's not going for him, the shoulders slump, he sulks a little bit, doesn't really put in the defensive work rate that you kind of want to see. When Rashford's not on it, it's almost like playing with 10 men at times. Last season, there were seriously times when Marcus Rashford was on the pitch, United were basically carrying a body out there. But if Ten Hag can get the best out of Marcus Rashford like he did that first season, you're looking at a guy that is capable of carrying United's entire attack. And when you look at this attack, right, Chet, you're looking at Amad Diallo. As much as I love Amad Diallo, he is not guaranteed goals. He's a great player, very good talent. There's nothing guaranteed about Amad Diallo. You're banking on talent there. In Garnacho, you're looking at a guy who likes to get goals, but he's not a dependable goal scorer either. Anthony, Sancho, the less said the better. Højlund, in the long run, you would like to think so, but would it shock anybody if Højlund has another season where it's still clear that he's not ready yet? It wouldn't shock me. And Xerxes is another guy that, very talented footballer, but not a reliable goal scorer. So Man United's season, at least from an attacking point of view, rests very heavily on the shoulders of Marcus Rashford. So it's hard to argue that he's not crucial. He's going to start next year. He is Man United's starting left winger, in my opinion. And I think he's crucial. We talk about players having bounce back seasons, right? Onana has to be better next year. Mount has to be more fit next year. Bruno has to be consistent from match day 1 to 38. But in terms of who United need to return to their best form more than anybody, I think it's Marcus Rashford. I think Marcus Rashford having a good season is the difference between Man United having a bad season and a good season. I think United's favors next year, their success as a footballing club, lies in what kind of version of Marcus Rashford you can get. And I'll end this by saying this, right? Because this is a guy that he splits opinion quite heavily. But this is ultimately, when it comes to Rashford, who for me is a guy that I used to absolutely love. I'll tell you this. The first game I ever went to go watch at Old Trafford was Rashford's debut. The second game I ever went to go watch at Old Trafford was Rashford's debut in the Premier League. My first 2 games at Old Trafford were Rashford's first 2 games at Old Trafford. So from the start, I had a connection to the guy. I wanted to see him do well more than anybody else. That love for Rashford has definitely dwindled in the last few years, especially this last season. Because me personally, I'm a big guy about body language. And Rashford's body language last year seriously annoyed me at times. But like I said, whether you like him or not, if you're a United fan, let me ask you this question right now. If Marcus Rashford was put up for sale and Mikel Arteta came in with £80 million to buy Marcus Rashford, would you feel comfortable with Marcus Rashford going to Arsenal? Love him or hate him, as a Man United fan, would you feel comfortable selling Marcus Rashford to a team of the quality of Arsenal? Hell no. F no. Anybody saying yes is a liar. Rashford helps them win the league. If Klopp at Liverpool these last few seasons came to United and offered 80 million to take Marcus Rashford and put him into his Liverpool system, where you've seen wingers in particular, their production almost multiply, double, triple, would you feel comfortable selling Marcus Rashford to Liverpool? I could say it for so many clubs. If you want to say send him abroad, fair enough. But if you don't feel comfortable sending Marcus Rashford to a rival, that tells you, A, how much you truly believe Rashford has the talent to be something great, and B, it tells you that if you have a talent like that, yes, he needs to do a lot better. No one will ever be able to tell me differently. Rashford, like I said, he's a moody player. He needs to get his act right at this point. The guy's 26, turning 27. This is the crucial part of your career where you have to put it together. But as a club too, surely it should be on us as well too, to surround this guy in the perfect environment to actually get the best out of him. That's the way I started thinking about things. And when I really deeped that no, I would feel very uncomfortable sending Rashford to Arsenal, it made me think, why would I want to sell Rashford then if I think he's that good? So Rashford, I can't lie, I'm putting him at crucial. But I think this is the most important season of his career, chat. I think this season is the most important season of Marcus Rashford's career. Because truly, if he doesn't manage to turn it around this year, in the year where I believe he'll be turning 27. He turns 27 this October. This is crunch time for him, bro. If Marcus Rashford doesn't turn it around this season as a 27-year-old, this is where, for me, all the hypotheticals that I just kind of named, then, in my eyes, they become irrelevant. Because while, yes, the idea of Rashford is great, and I want to believe in it as long as I can because I truly believe in the talent, theory will never outdo application. So for me, it's a crucial season for Rashford. It's a crucial season for his production at United, and United's season, in my eyes, truly rests at the feet of Marcus Rashford. Have a great season, and United could do big things this year. Give us the shit you gave us last year, and I'm sorry, Chad. United are in for a long, long, long year. Next up, Christian Eriksen. Eriksen's another one, right? You say get rid, and I hear it. But who the hell is taking Eriksen? Who the hell is taking Eriksen, bro? I think Eriksen is one of those guys that's going to stay at United until his contract expires. We send him on a free, and then he maybe goes and plays for Ajax for a year, or he goes back to Denmark. Like, I just don't know any serious team is taking Christian Eriksen, bro. The guy has no legs anymore. How much could you realistically even get for Eriksen, bro? I might actually keep him as a squad player, chat. I'll be real. Just because I'm already selling 2 to 3 midfielders. You're going to see the rest of the guys that I decide to sell. I am selling a lot of midfielders, and you can't sell everybody. So I might actually put Eriksen as a squad player. There's no point on putting on the edge because, bro, you either sell him or he leaves on a free in a year. I think I might actually keep him as a squad player for a year. Just to fill out the squad. He's going to be, in an ideal world, he's like your 5th choice midfielder. You never really have to rely on him in big games. He plays in the Carabao Cup. He plays the odd game in the Europa League. Isn't he unhappy with his role? Well, if he's unhappy with his role, you sell him. But if he's happy to just kind of collect the check at United, I think I'd keep him as a squad player, bro. I think I'd probably keep Eriksen as a squad player. I'll be real. Jadon Sancho. I'm getting rid. And this isn't anything against Jadon Sancho as a footballer. I think Jadon Sancho is a very talented footballer. And I think that Jadon Sancho, with the correct move this year, can be very successful somewhere else. But I'm sorry, Jadon Sancho, I've said it now for 3 years. He will never, ever, ever be successful at Man United. Ever, bro. There's just some wingers that are not... There's some players in general that are made for certain clubs. They're made for them. Their character, their personality, their style, the way they adhere to fans, the way they get you off your seat, they just match a football team, right? There's some players that are born to play for Barcelona. There's some players that are born to play for Real Madrid. A guy like Roy Keane, I was talking to Cam the other day. Not Roy Keane, excuse me, Eric Cantona. Eric Cantona is like one of those instances where like a player is born to play for that club. It's like a match made in heaven. And then there's also instances where it doesn't matter how good a player is. Sometimes the fit just isn't correct. And I think with Jadon Sancho, I don't think the fit is correct at United. I don't think he's a bad footballer, and I think he can be very effective somewhere else. But I don't think he'll ever be successful at United. And that's not even with Ten Hag, without Ten Hag. Doesn't matter who the manager is. I don't think even as a fan base, the way Man United fans consume football, the way we're programmed to view wingers, the wingers that we've seen in our entire lifelines as football fans, I don't think Jadon Sancho matches the ethos of what a Man United attacker is. So it doesn't even matter if Jadon Sancho is playing okay. I don't think United fans will ever get fully behind the guy. And as a squad player, I would keep Sancho. And I actually think United might be hard-pressed to get rid of him this year. I think they might actually end up keeping him. And for a year as a squad player, if he were to take that role, which I don't think he should, and I don't think he would want to, he'd be decent as a squad player. You could do worse than having Jadon Sancho off the bench. But I think the story with Jadon Sancho is done. I think United could get a decent fee from him. I think if you can get 40 million-ish for Jadon Sancho, you take it, go reinvest it in other areas of the pitch. Jadon Sancho gets the move he needs. He gets to kind of restart his career somewhere else because he's still a young kid with talent. I think the move would suit everybody, but I think he's got to go. Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes is crucial. Now, anybody who really knows me, chat, you guys know how I feel about Bruno Fernandes. I'm not his biggest fan. I'll be very clear here. I am not a Bruno Fernandes lover. I think he has his pros. What are his pros? I think he's one of the most creative players in the world. I think his inventiveness, even more than his creativity, he kind of can create solutions out of nothing. Like, he just brainstorms solutions. I think he's very tricky in tight areas, very good on the half turn. And I think in transition, passing in transition, he's sublime. Rashford on the last line, you want Bruno playing him in behind. You want Bruno playing those line-splitting passes. Can strike a ball too. But there are aspects of Bruno's game for me that I have massive issues over. And it's why personally, I believe while Bruno is a great player, he's a great footballer, I don't think he's an elite footballer. I don't think Bruno is like a top 10 player in the world. I think Bruno's a great footballer. I don't think he's an elite footballer. I think the lack of let's face it, right? Let's call a spade here, chat. Bruno can't carry the ball. He can't dribble the ball. He can't bring the ball forwards with exceptional power. You look at a De Bruyne, for example, and I know his legs are starting to give up on him. But you look at Kevin De Bruyne, the way he picks up the ball from deeper areas and drives the team forward and carries the ball and runs past players and brings his team up the pitch, runs in transition. Forget about the creating and the passing and all that stuff. That aspect of his game is something that, in my opinion, Bruno has nowhere near De Bruyne's level. And very few players do, to be fair. But I think it's a massive hindrance to Bruno's game. I think Bruno's a brilliant outlet passer. I think he's a brilliant playmaker. But Bruno can't carry the ball. And I think for a player in that position, it's actually an issue, right? No player is perfect, right? But I think in those midfield positions, especially when you look at how physical the league is kind of getting, you look at the athletes that every single team has, Bruno's inability to really carry the ball or even really dribble the ball like that, I think holds him back in certain situations. I think it does. I think his lack of ball retention at times, and I understand, he has so much responsibility on his shoulders to create for United that he has to try things and he has to pull off risks and he's going to lose the ball a lot. But Bruno in general is a high volume player. He wants to try passes consecutively over and over and over. We've seen it throughout his entire career. He's a high volume player, but for a team, in my opinion, that wants to hold on to the ball and that wants to, again, be protagonists in possession, I do always think that a player like Bruno, who you can't really rely on to consistently take care of the ball in dangerous situations or when you're kind of getting closed down, a player that consistently wants to play final passes and wants to play flicks that at times have no purpose for a team whatsoever and in fact put us in dangerous positions, I do think it holds us back at times. But one thing is for certain, Man United are so dependent on Bruno Fernandes that it doesn't even matter, in my opinion, what I think about Bruno Fernandes, because this criticism I have for Bruno is relevant for elite teams. Man United is not an elite team. We're a million miles off being an elite team. In the current version that we are right now, we're crying out for Bruno. We cannot exist without Bruno. We can't create chances without Bruno. The guy carries the creative burden for Man United. And for that reason, everything I'm saying right now might be relevant when he goes to Portugal. It might be relevant if United ever wants to become an elite team. Because I believe he's a brilliant floor raiser, but his ability to raise the ceiling of elite teams, that's where for me I have a bit of question marks. But we're not in any position right now to worry about raising the ceiling. We need to raise the floor right now. And Bruno, for me, is a guy that United needs. And their most consistent performer. He's their most reliable guy. He's the guy that even in United's worst season still puts up numbers. And like I said, I have questions long term. If United were to ever become an elite team, I think he has aspects of his game that he needs to improve on. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, no doubt about it, Man United's success heavily relies and is heavily impacted on how crucial and how successful Bruno Fernandes is this season. He's crucial for me. Facundo Pellistri. We can kind of speed through these ones. Get rid. Not the level at Man United. Never has been the level at Man United. I feel bad for him because we've sent him on so many loans. And let's be real, we probably sold him a dream buying him in the first place. But this kid has decent speed. Actually plays decent for his country, to be honest with you. But Man United is not his level. So get rid, in my opinion. Buy in there. Squad player. Again, happy to be back up to Onana. Anthony, get rid. I don't even know how much time I have to really even take on this. Anthony is the most clear and obvious get rid potentially on this entire list. And in my opinion, chat, Erik ten Hag, that should be one of his priorities, to be honest with you. Erik ten Hag should be looking to sell Anthony this summer. Or at least to get him on loan, let him rebuild some of his value, and then sell him at the first immediate chance. This right now, whether you love Ten Hag or you hate him, this is a massive blemish, a massive red flag, a massive X on his resume as a United manager so far. He's done some good things at United. He's done some awful things at United. But if you look at his overall tenure at United, one of the biggest blotches on his resume right now is the fact that he co-signed Antony and the fact that he played him as often as he did and almost at times forced him into the team to kind of prove that, look, my guy, you can rely on him. In my opinion, I obviously, we know my opinions on Ten Hag last season, but I'm willing to obviously give him a chance. I want him to succeed at United. If he really wants to regain the trust of any fan that lost him last year, he'll be going a hell of a long way in doing so by selling Antony. That for me will be an indication that, look, he's willing to admit, I did wrong on the signing. I thought he could come in, make an impact, be a brilliant player for United. It hasn't worked out whatsoever. Let's let bygones be bygones. I'll accept my L and we'll leave it in the past and we'll move on forward. For me, Ten Hag doing that, I'll applaud him and I'll say I respect him so much for doing so. And I think every United fan should. The move hasn't worked out. Whether you thought Antony was a good player at Ajax or not, that's irrelevant at this point. Any United fan with two working eyes can clearly see this guy is miles out of his depth at the club. Honestly, bang average. For me, one of the worst signings United has ever made. And there's a good argument to make that out of all the wingers that United employs at the club right now, he's the worst. I'm getting rid of him tomorrow. I would loan him because, look, I know he's on big wages. You spent a lot of money on him. So if you can't sell him, you can't sell him. I'm not going to blame Ineos for not being able to rectify a mistake that the Glazers did before them. But you have to loan him out this summer. You have to hope that he can rebuild his value elsewhere. And then when he returns to the club with his value healed a bit, get him the hell out of there. That's a mistake from the previous regime that Man United needs to wash their hands with. They have to. They have to. Lisandro Martinez. Crucial. What else has to be said? You want to know how crucial Lisandro Martinez is? Look at Man United last season when he wasn't in the team. United are so reliant on Lisandro in terms of how good he is in build-up, how brilliant he is on the ball. I'll say it. I think he's the best ball-playing center back in the world. In terms of purely ball at his feet, Laporte is really good. He's up there. I think Lisandro's the best. I think Lisandro's the absolute best ball-playing center back in the world. I think he's an incredible box defender. In tight areas, he is so good at getting stuck in, at getting his foot in, at getting in front of somebody, at putting his head in a dangerous situation. My one question with Lisandro is defending an open space. That's my one issue with him. But Lisandro is brilliant, and he's crucial to Man United. I don't even think this needs much conversation. Is this Collier? Chat, I'm surprised you guys are this one. I'm making him a squad player this year, bro. Because look, I'm selling McTominay. I'm selling Hannibal. Eriksson is on the verge. I can't lie. I put him at squad player, but I could very easily justify selling him. I think Collier can actually fill out the squad, bro. I think Collier could actually be a good body in Man United's Premier League and Europa League squad. You shouldn't be playing serious minutes. He shouldn't be relied upon in big games. Nowhere near it. Look, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 guys ahead of him in the pecking order. But I think he's a good player, bro. Honestly, I'm a fan. Defensively, aggression, athleticism, I think he can cope with the senior game, bro. And I think he can actually give you healthy minutes in all competitions this year. He's not a guy that we should be like rushing to play every single game. Let's be real. He's not, I don't know, he's not Pedri. But I actually think he could be a squad player this year for Man United. I think he can be a first team player for United. I'm gonna put him at squad player. Rasmus Højlund. Rasmus Højlund is fighting for the 11. He's fighting for the 11 with another guy on this list. And I don't think anything can really change him into crucial this year. Because I just don't think he's there in his development. It's a crucial year for his development, but he's not crucial to Man United yet, especially with Xerxes there. I've kind of spoken about my question marks in terms of how they're both going to be deployed, and I have serious concerns about having 2 strikers of a similar age with similar levels of like inexperience and similar records of not being the most guaranteed in front of goal. I have a major question mark in terms of both your strikers being of that mold, but in my eyes, there's no question about it. I think both of them are supremely talented. And I think Rasmus Højlund has all the tools, if developed and molded correctly, to be a top number 9. But right now, he's not that. The season he just got off, it was extremely difficult. And the Euros he just got finished playing was extremely difficult. He's very raw. He's too eager at times to get on the ball. He's too desperate at times to wrestle with defenders bigger than him. I think he needs to learn a bit of patience in his game. And that's normal. That kind of stuff that I'm describing comes with age and experience. And it also doesn't hurt when you have a guy like Ruud van Nistelrooy now kind of in the coaching staff working with you on those aspects of being a center forward every single day in training. But as of this moment, Rasmus Højlund will be fighting for his place in the 11. And I think that's healthy. I think it's very healthy that a player like Højlund is not relied upon to be crucial for United. That was an issue last year. The fact we were relying on a kid, basically, who has never scored more than 15 goals in a league season to lead the line for United over 38-game season, that was suicide on the club, and it was unfair on Rasmus Højlund. We threw him into the deep end, and he had his moments, but for the most part, he inevitably drowned. I think it was unfair. And I hope that between him and Xerxes, minutes are shared, and both of them can develop healthily. Alejandro Garnacho. For me, Fighting for the 11. Fighting for the 11. He's another one for me, chat. Again, can hold his head high after last season. He had a good season last year, and he played way too many minutes. I think he played damn near the most outfield minutes at one point. But he shouldn't have for a player of that age. You want him to be able to grow into his body. You want him to be able to like learn on the job. You don't want to have to rely on a teenager like Garnacho. And United at times were relying on Garnacho, both in terms of injuries from other players and the fact that other players just simply didn't turn up. So I have mad respect for Garnacho. But in an ideal world, Garnacho is not such an elite talent that he's a guaranteed starter for Man United. I'm sorry, that should never be the case. Garnacho is a good player who I believe his best attribute is actually his mentality. And forgive me for lack of a better phrasing, the kid has cojones, man. Honestly, my favorite part about Garnacho is that he's not afraid of the moment. He takes everything head on. He's not afraid of any defender he goes up against. He's not afraid of any team he plays against. He's not afraid to play on any wing. He's not afraid to take on his man. And it might not work all the time, but he's going to keep doing it. Damn it, he's not going to stop trying. It's a bit like Vinicius. Obviously, Vinicius for me is a much bigger talent. But in terms of that relentlessness and that fearlessness, for me, it's the best attribute about Garnacho. But he's not undisputed a talent, elite level of a talent to be guaranteed every single minute for Man United. Could he find his way into the starting 11 most games? Absolutely. He could have a very good season, but we shouldn't be relying on Alejandro Garnacho next season. His form shouldn't be that detrimental in either a good way or a bad way to Man United's success. That's my opinion. Casemiro. Oh boy. If I could put him first, if I could sell him first, I would. And this is a sad one for me, chat. Honestly, it brings me no joy to say this about Casemiro. But brother, this guy is so washed, man. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Casemiro is one of the worst players in his position in the Premier League. He's one of the worst players in his position in the entire Premier League. And it's insane. It's startling. And it's disappointing how quickly he became that. Because I'll never forget that first season, chat. People can rewrite history all they want. Casemiro in that first season had as much of an impact as almost any player I've seen join Man United since Sir Alex. Casemiro was immense for us. Immense in every aspect. Goal scoring, passing, defending, leadership, being that boss in the midfield. He was incredible for us. But what's that quote that one football player had? I've never seen a guy go as quickly from a good dude to a dude I didn't even recognize anymore. That's Casemiro, bro. That's Casemiro. I don't recognize this guy anymore, man. He is washed. Washed. Miro, man. That ain't Miro anymore, bro. And it's going to be tough to get him out. It's going to be very, very tough to get him out because his wages are insane. And he's happy to just collect the check and chill in Manchester. His family is settled. He's settled. He makes a shit ton of money. It's going to be very difficult to get him out of the club. But for me, this is another one like Antony. He was better than Antony. Let's not get it twisted. I don't even want to disrespect Casemiro by comparing him to Antony. But in terms of like washing your hands of the signing and just moving on, best for all parties, Casemiro has to go. Leny Yoro. And I know I can confirm the news now. More tests to follow soon, but Manchester United are now concerned Leny Yoro has fractured his metatarsal. It'd mean up to 2 months sidelined for the new signing. I mean, we can't buy ourselves any luck, can we? I mean, goddamn, we have no luck. We're the sorriest, most unlucky club on the planet. Who else does this shit happen to, bro? Seriously. I mean, damn, bro. That's an absolute shame. Leny Yoro for me is crucial. Is crucial. Not just for the short-term future of Man United, but the long-term. Again, just how I described Kobbie Mainoo as a cornerstone of the club, Leny Yoro is also a cornerstone of the club. That's a player that for the next 5, 10, 15 years, however long you have him, every manager that comes in is building around Leny Yoro. You want a new center back? Cool. How does he play next to Leny Yoro? You want a defensive midfielder? Okay, how does he play in front of Leny Yoro? You can want to replace the entire team. Here's 10 new players, but I'll tell you who's not being replaced. Leny Yoro. Prayers up to the kid. Speedy recovery. That's a tough one, man. Honestly, that's a very, very tough one. Big future on him. I think it's a massive coup for United to sign him. And I hope that the rest of his United tenure is a lot luckier in terms of injury and fitness than it's been his first few weeks. That's devastating, man. But Yoro, I made a video on him. You can go check it out, see my views on him. I think he's sensational, man. And this kind of further like for me, this right here, chat, has just confirmed that United are going to buy De Ligt, in my opinion, this summer. If you didn't think United were buying De Ligt, the fact that Yoro's out for 2 months is going to spark PTSD in United. They're going to remember last season, and they're going to say, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. We're not going into games worried that Johnny Evans might see the pitch. De Ligt, any AMP, any means possible, come through. And then Joshua Zirkzee, again, I made a video on him if you really want to see my thoughts on Joshua Zirkzee. Fighting for the 11. Similar case to Højlund, inexperienced at an elite level. Also, never has been like a killer in front of goal. His game is more so akin to dropping deep, creating space for others, playmaking, getting heavy touches, sending runners in behind. He's a real playmaking number. And I think it's going to be an adaptation period for him as well, too. Ten Hag has hinted that he could play across the front three, maybe even in the number 10 position, so I'll be interested in seeing that. But he's another one, right? You need to hold your expectations firm with Xerxes for now. Let the kid develop. Let the kid grow. Let the kid grow into a new environment and see how it goes. I would love to see him and Højlund basically share minutes this season, however you decide to do that. But this is it, chat. This is me ranking every single player going in. The only thing I might change, right? I could hear putting Eriksen here into get rid. But then that leaves you with Collier, Bruno, Kobbie Mainoo, and Mason Mount as your midfield options. If that's the case, United needs to sign 2-3 central midfielders this year. And that's why, for me, I think Eriksen as a squad player has to be there. United has to sign a defensive midfielder. Has to. Whether that's Ugarte, whether that's Zubimendi, they have to sign a player in that position. In my opinion, they need to sign 2. I'm not a huge fan of him, but the more I hear these links to Adrien Rabiot on a free, the more I understand them. I'm not a huge fan of him, but again, when I look at how many midfielders I believe United needs to get rid of and then replace, for me, Rabiot is an immense upgrade on McTominay, for example. Does a few of the things that McTominay does, but for me at a higher level. That's not for me to say he's a great elite level midfielder, but he improves our midfield. Gives us another body in there. Gives us legs, which I think we severely miss in midfield. So I believe United needs 2, maybe even 3 midfielders. I think the Yoro's injury, as well as, for me, I'm selling Victor Lindelof. De Ligt has to come. And if you're selling Sancho and Antony, which I don't think both of them will leave, but this is just in my world, do you need another right winger? I don't know if this is all stuff United can do in one summer, but the most important thing to remember is that this is a long-term project. Ineos are not here to win us the league in year 1. The goal for Ineos and the goal as United fans is how can we set up our team best to contend in the next 3 to 4 years, not just in year 1.